Burnout is the result of chronic stress. This show is about helping career individuals to actually feel empowered and to have tools that they can use in their daily lives, because I truly adore, respect, and want to help those that have dreams and that want to build and create in their lives. And I want to show them that they can do this without breaking their bodies or relationships in the process.
Hey there, welcome to the Well Balanced Mind. My name's Shannon Rollins. I'm your host. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist and coach. And I am so happy that you're here today watching this episode because it is so relevant to the times that we are in right now. And if this is your first time here, welcome. This show is about insights to understanding your mind, insights to living a healthier and happier life from the inside out. So I'll bring you tools and strategies in every area of your life related to mental health and mental well-being, living a happier, healthy lifestyle altogether. And the topic for today is the big elephant in the room. That's what I like to call it. And really, it sparked my interest when I was on Facebook 2 weeks ago. And I saw someone post on Facebook and they said, "If you don't agree with my views, then I'm going to unfriend you. So just tell me if you don't agree with it, and I don't want to be friends with you on Facebook. I don't want to see your garbage anymore." And it got me thinking, man, why do we all act this way? And even to an extreme, right? Whenever we have a disagreement with someone, whenever we don't agree with their views, we tend to shut down automatically. And it's really interesting because we've seen this happen with our society moving forward about in the last year or 2 years, and it's always been there, right? There's always been disagreements. We've always had disagreements with things, with other humans, because we all have our own thoughts. We all have our emotions. We all have our own personal experiences that we've dealt with that have really shaped us into who we are today and what our viewpoints are moving forward on every single area of your life. Guys, there's a reason why they say don't bring up politics or religion on your first date. But other people might say, oh, maybe I should bring it up so then I know what their viewpoints are. But today we're really going to talk about how to get around this and how not to be triggered if someone disagrees with you on something. And we're even going to dive into topics of why humans hate, why there is this intense amount of anger towards other people who oppose viewpoints. And really what it boils down to is whenever we have a conversation, whenever you have a conversation at work, whenever you have a conversation with a loved one, or just with some random person on Facebook, because we've all seen it happen. We've all seen the trigger of someone post a status on their Facebook, and then you start seeing all the comments underneath of all the viewpoints, and it starts to get kind of nasty. You know, it starts to get really, really heated, and this happens all the time. And anytime you bring up your viewpoint, anytime there's a conversation, there is always going to be 3 outcomes that could potentially happen here. You could agree with the person, you could disagree with the person, or you could be neutral and just not care that much. But what if it's a topic that you are really invested in, that really affects you as a person? It affects your livelihood. And that's when we start to feel heated. That's when we start to react to these situations. And really this age-old question of why do people get angry towards each other? And even more than that, even become hateful towards each other. Why do humans hate in general? And there's so many different studies that are out there on why we react this way, why these things happen when people have opposing viewpoints than us. But I just want to go over a couple reasons, because as you go through this, I want to help you reframe to where you don't get triggered when someone is super angry about something and they're kind of reacting in that way. And the first one is fear. They're afraid. Anytime that we tend to have a fight or flight response, And what that response is a stress response. It means that something that we care about is at stake, and we feel like our safety and security are in jeopardy. Now, this isn't a conscious thought. This is something subconscious, to where a thought pops up in your head and you say, my safety's in jeopardy because they don't agree with my viewpoint and it can't change. Because we're really afraid of change. We're afraid of that uncertainty. So people end up falling into that category of becoming really aggressive or just lashing out at other people because they're afraid. They are afraid of change, they're afraid of the unknown, and really fear of uncertainty in general. And really, what happens if everyone agrees with that other person? Because then they might be afraid even that they get butted out of the group or that their views aren't accepted anymore. And so what do? They react in a way where it's impulsive. So I'm afraid, remember, well, if you watched last week's episode, if you haven't, go back and watch it. I talk about the 4 primary emotions, and fear breeds anger. If you're afraid of something and it really starts getting intense in general, it breeds anger. And so this whole month we're talking about emotions and really understanding what your emotions are. And that fear is always there if you don't deal with it and address it. The anger will be there if you don't deal with it and address it and really understand what's going on for yourself. And then the other thing is lack of ownership. That's another reason we, as a society, as human beings in general, we are afraid, so it causes us to want to blame other people. And that's what that lack of ownership comes from, is if I blame someone else, that means that I don't have to take 100% responsibility for the way I'm feeling. And then the third reason why people might become hateful or aggressive is that they have low self-esteem. So I'm going to give you a trick. Here's a little trick. Whenever someone is very aggressive and they react in a way of aggression, or they say something really, really mean, I want you to think to yourself, that person is hurting and they're scared. And you can even, this is an NLP technique, you can even imagine, especially if it's an internet person just hammering it away, they're going at you on the internet, imagine that it's just a hurt little kid. And now I'm not name calling, I'm not name calling someone a little kid, but we all have an inner child within us. And that person has an inner child that's not healed. And so what do? If it's not healed into that place of understanding, it's that reaction. It's almost like imagining if you have a toddler and your little kid's throwing a temper tantrum on the floor until they get their lollipop. That's kind of the way you look at it. But looking at a way of compassion for this person, because if they are reacting that way, you can almost assume that there's something deep that's going on in their life. There's some type of suffering. There's some type of situation where they feel the need. If they don't react out in this way, then their life is at stake, their livelihood, their opinions, which brings me to another reason why people do this. It's the need to belong. Studies show that people actually bond with other humans by pulling other people down rather than lifting them up. When you find that commonality of you both dislike the same thing, then that bond can actually be stronger than if you both have the commonality towards something. And don't worry, hang around. I'm going to give you tips on how to get out of this if you're finding that you are that person who releases that type of reaction for someone you don't agree with. I mean, with politics or anything that's a sensitive subject for your livelihood, you see this happen all the time. And that really brings us to the question of, where is this getting the best of you? And it's really interesting when we break down, it's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can look it up. But Maslow, he built the hierarchy, and it's a triangle shape. It's a triangle shape of all of our human needs to live and to thrive. And it's really interesting the way that he built the hierarchy of needs. The very bottom one, that's the baseline. You can't have a need above it without the bottom one. And the bottom need is our basic physiological needs. That's our food, our water, our shelter, even money. The things that we have to live and to thrive. And as we look at these hierarchy of needs, if we don't fulfill all of these things, then we're going to not feel like we're good enough, or we will find a way to feel scared. We'll want to feel scared almost when you are thinking about these hierarchy of needs. And the second level, as we're kind of getting into these physiological needs, you're getting into safety. That safety need of, man, am I safe where I live? So you could have a roof over your head, but do I feel safe there? Do I feel safe within my environment? And you can't feel safe if you don't have food or shelter, right? So they build on top of each other. And then we kind of get into these basic human needs, but they're not the safety, the basics to live. It's the basics to feel love. It's the basics emotionally for you to thrive in life, for you to feel ultimate fulfillment each and every day in your life. And so then you kind of move in these psychological needs. And these psychological needs are really interesting because this is where your ability to belong are. Our need to belong, our need to feel significant in our life. Significance is a human need, our need to grow. And if we're not getting those things or these needs to feel needed, because, right, if you don't feel needed, especially with your voice, with your viewpoint, then you ultimately don't feel love. And that is a human need in itself. We have to, all of us, men and women, whether you want to agree with it or not, we have to feel love. And that's because we're basically pack animals. Humans are needing other humans for reassurance, to know that they're doing the right thing, to know that they're on their path. And none of those you cannot self-actualize if you don't have any of those things. And really self-actualizing is sitting in who you are, knowing your truth, not reacting, feeling very clear here, and understanding what paths you need to take forward. Having an intuition and listening to your intuition. See, the problem is if you're not clear on all the other things in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you're not able to really listen to your intuition because you might not be sure if it's actually your intuition or someone else's intuition that's influencing your viewpoint. And it's really interesting as we look at human behavior and we look at the way that these things happen and the way that people don't get along and they clash, it's really because everyone's afraid. That's really what it boils down to. Everyone's afraid and they are using it in that way. And so I want to give you some tips to have really a better conversation in general. If you like debating, that's great. I'm happy for you. I'm not a big debater, but if you enjoy it, then it's healthy because we're able to step outside of ourselves and what we're used to and really look at where that other person is coming from. And I know some people who are great at healthy debate. And it's really interesting to watch it happen because they really have a sense of calmness and you can tell that they don't get triggered. So if you want to be able to read posts online or just not have a negative influence when you're seeing things, is really understanding how to have this strong conversation with people. And when we look at empathy in general, knowing what empathy is and how to use empathy to your advantage. We all have the ability to be empathetic, but sometimes it has to be learned. Sometimes it has to be taught towards us because we're really not used to looking at other people's perspectives. We're not used to stepping outside into other people's shoes. And Dr. Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, they came up with some studies on empathy in general. And there's actually 3 different ways that they would structure empathy. And the very first one is cognitive. That's really just perspective taking. You step out of someone else's shoes and you look at the situation. And that's great and all. That's something that should be done anyways, in the workplace, anywhere. And asking yourself those hard questions to step out of that person's shoes in general. And the second one is empathy in general. And that's really feeling someone's emotions. So, okay, have you ever been watching TV and it was a really good movie and you start crying? I can tell you that I'm the queen of crying in movies. And that's, if you've done that, you have that ability to feel that person's emotion and potentially match it to the way that you felt similar to the past. So how do we do that though, without taking on other people's emotions? Now, empathy is great and all, but the real place that you want to get to, which they both studied as well, is compassion. Compassion is love seeing pain. It's love seeing pain. And the way that you can build compassion is knowing who you are, what your viewpoints are, and not agreeing with that person, because you don't have to agree with them. They could be wrong, 100% wrong. But being able to see yourself in their shoes, perspective taking at the same time, have a level of understanding, and have a level of commonality and acceptance. What does this look like? Right? A level of commonality and acceptance is the ability to say, you know what? I know what they did was wrong, or I know what they said was wrong, and I don't agree with it, and it was terrible. But I might understand what they went through growing up, or understand the situation that they have. And having this level of commonality, understanding, and acceptance is really what compassion is altogether. And so how do we have more compassion? How do we bring people together in a way to where we're not triggered? We have to bring it back to the commonality that we're all human beings doing the best we can with the resources that we have at the time. Everyone reacts in a way where we think it's at the best interest. It's either at their best interest, but we're all trying to survive, right? If we really boil down to, and you don't have to agree with me, humans are animals, right? The species, if we really boil down to that, everyone is just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have at the time. And so having that ability to be compassionate in these conversations will not only set you free, but it sets that other person free, whether they know it or not. And having a level of compassion or forgiveness even isn't about them. Now, forgiveness and compassion is really, in my opinion, a selfish act because it's really for you. It's really for you to be able to let go of any bad emotions that you might be feeling towards a situation. And so the sooner that you're able to let go and have that level of compassion, the better it is for you, the better it is for everyone around you, and really protecting your energy. Because if you're around people who are super, super negative, then it's going to rub off on you. And their energy is going to transfer to your energy, especially if you're really trying to have a level of empathy and compassion more so than before. And so if you do see these people on Facebook or on social media who are really negative, we all know who they are, or it could be you yourself. You could be watching this thinking to yourself, oh man, that's me. That's okay. We're all doing the best we can. Don't sweat it. Don't sweat the small stuff. But understanding when you see someone like that and you're finding that you are getting triggered by them, depart from them. Take them off your Facebook. Take them off your Instagram feed. Take them off your Twitter. Whatever you need to do. The clients that I've been seeing in the past year, 6 months to a year, their anxiety has skyrocketed, and they've admitted because they have been so glued to the news. They've been so glued to social media. And it's really about understanding what your trigger is there, right? If you're finding that you're getting a lot more anxiety, what's the commonality? Oh, I watch the news every morning. Don't do that. Shut off the news, have some me time, have some important times for you to fill your cup up so you can have the compassion for other people. So not only having that compassion, but really putting a personal boundary. If there's a negative person who just won't stop with the viewpoint, then shut it down. And it's easy as that, right? So being able to understand those things are super important as well. But I want you to walk away with some tips of how to have a better conversation with people, and really how to step outside of yourself and be able to understand, especially in business, if you have a job and you're working with a team, there's always going to be people with different viewpoints than you. So take these tips along with you. I want you to challenge yourself. Number one, what does that mean? Get into groups or circles that you normally would not be in. And that allows you to see that other person as they are, to see what they go through or what struggles you have, or if it's another work team, whatever the case is for you. And you might find that you're a little triggered at first, but being able to have that full understanding, really challenging yourself to put yourself in that space and even learn something new. Because remember what I said earlier, growth is a strong human need. The second thing is, like we said before, walking in other people's shoes. And before you respond, imagine yourself in that person's shoes. You can respond, you can come back with a response opposing the viewpoint. Absolutely. But make sure you do it from a place of love, acceptance, commonality, and compassion all together. Ask better questions. Ask yourself better questions. Ask the other people better questions, because then that helps you get a well-rounded range before you dive into your response. And that leads me to the fourth one, is focus on what you have in common. Like I said before, we're all human beings, right? We all have the need to belong. We all have the need to feel safe, and we all have the right to be respected. So not only is it being able to have the right to share what your viewpoint is, but doing it in a place of love will help you elicit a better response from the other person on the side of the table. It's all in your tone. It's all in your language. And if they know that you're doing the best you can to convey what your response is, then I promise you they will respond in a significantly better way. So knowing that your tone and your body language are essential to conveying your message the way that you want it conveyed. And being able to listen. And Stephen Covey, you probably have heard this quote many times, but he came up with that quote. I don't know the words exactly, but it's, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. What does that tell us? That we need to listen more. And most people listen with an intent to reply. So if we're sitting here having a conversation and I'm talking to you, you're already thinking of your response to come back to me. And instead, just pausing. And it's okay to take time in between a conversation. Like, hey, let me example. Have you ever been in a room with a person who never talks? You've been in a room with a coworker or whoever, that one person you work with who's very quiet and they never talk. And then they open their mouth and the one thing they say is really, really profound. You're like, dang, I can't believe you came up with it. You don't expect that, because the people who are talking all the time, they're sharing everything. Take it from me, I am a chatty Cathy. And it really takes practice. It takes a lot of practice to be able to learn to listen in a way that makes sense for you. And it doesn't mean that you have to change who you are as a person, right? It just means that we're looking at different viewpoints and different things. So those are my 4 tips to having a better conversation and not being triggered, especially if someone is coming at you in an angry or even hateful way because you have opposing viewpoints. And we'll just recap it again for a moment. It's challenging yourself, getting in different circles. This creates that ability for you to do something new and look at different viewpoints. Walking in other people's shoes was number 2. Just thinking about that other person and why they have that viewpoint. Asking better questions. Ask yourself better questions. Like, why do I think like that? What are some reasons that I might have this opinion? And then asking that other person better questions as well. And then, of course, last but not least, focus on what you have in common and really capitalize on those commonalities. And being able to listen, learning to talk less and listen more. And I really, really hope that you enjoyed the episode for today. I try to keep them very timely based on what's going on, and they will always loop back to mental health, how to have better relationships, more confidence, and more love overall in your life. And if you're interested in finding out more about me and what I offer, you can always go to shannonrollins.com. And thank you so much for joining me today. Much love to you, and I will see you next week.